Teaching log number 11. Oh my God. Part 1. Today I'm going over visual art. So it's mostly going to be focusing on visual rhetoric. There was an article that I provided my students a couple last week where it kind of breaks down like the power of visual, and it's more analysis based. But I think through the analysis, they are able to compose their own word picture. That's kind of the objective with this class. The interesting thing is that one of my peers actually has a sample of a word picture done correctly. So I'm going to have that read to the class, and I'm going to try to figure out what picture they use because they're using a movie trailer. And through this, I have a couple of movie posters that I can use. One of the things that I kind of do want to do is show a video. It's not out of the blue, but it's a little weird, where a YouTuber analyzes a movie trailer by like the composition, the characters, things like that, and kind of writes a review and predicts what's going to happen to it. Like, this movie's not older, it's like within the past 5 years, but it's in a sense older, so they should have an idea of what movie it is I'm talking about. They probably would have watched this movie at one point, or they have heard about this movie. And this is a really good thing because this YouTuber does that with a lot of other films. Like, they do it with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The movie that I'm going to try to show them is with Moana. They do it with Coco. And they mostly do it with like superhero movies, like anything Marvel. And they do it with like Harry Potter and then Disney Pixar. So it's really interesting to see how the students grasp this. To kind of get an idea of where my students are and if they are reading, I'm going to do like a turn-in assignment where they kind of explain what is in visual rhetoric. It's where you just list what's, like, if you read the article, you can just list like an image, like text, the size, the color, things like that. Like, these are like sub points. Another thing that I'm going to do with this free write, so that way I can prepare while they do this, is look for some movie posters so they can write an activity in class about that. And then through this, I'm also kind of going to start segueing into their next exercise, which is the scene. How does scene play into the visual rhetoric? How does this one significant object play into this scene? Because they kind of go hand in hand, and through this they're going to be able to start doing the ethnography assignment, for which is their third exercise. Basically, this progression is them writing a narrative, keeping in mind description, setting, and plot, because those are like three of the biggest things that I'm mostly touching upon. Like, description in the sense, how do you describe an object with the word picture? Setting the scene, and ethnography is like what happens in this scene kind of thing. So I'm really excited for that. They read Sleeping Beauty for this assignment, so I want to see what their initial thoughts are to the stories. And from there, we'll just see where the rest of the class goes. I don't know. But that's it for now. I have to grab my stuff and go to the class and see how it goes. So I'll be back after the class, and fingers crossed there is a good response today. Last class was everyone was a little dead. But I think it's mostly because of its essay. They had to turn in their essays last time, which I think I have to collect some other stuff today. Until after class. Visual rhetoric is a difficult term to explain. My students were supposed to read a chapter talking about visual rhetoric. And I don't know if they did the reading or anything, but they attempted to answer the question that I asked, which is what composes, what are visual texts composed of? Obviously an image, but the text says that it was an image, the coloring, the size, the font, the text, and the composition or the layout of the image. And once I filled in the blanks for them, they were able to see it applied. I asked them what are examples of visual text, and they didn't know how to answer that. So once I started bringing up movie trailers, movie posters, they're like, oh, then they started kind of listing what it is, like different forms of visual rhetoric, visual texts. And then I went on to show them a video, which I'll link below, of how a movie trailer is portrayed with analysis and interpretation, and kind of digging into the history of different things. So I want them to kind of apply that video onto their next exercise, describing an object, or just describe to me what object it is. Originally, I was thinking of telling them to pick an object, write about it, but I think as long as they apply the object or picture to fairy tales, then that's fine. I'm willing to be lenient about that. That's definitely something I'm going to change in this progression. I need to do a little bit more modification on this progression for future classes, but I need to keep an eye on that. I also noticed that their first progression did not get a lot of great things. So for my future class, I'm gonna flip it around where they do the literacy narrative first, because it's easier to kind of get into and just talk about what it is that you see and then write about it. While summary and analysis, the analysis aspect is a little bit more difficult, but that's definitely something that I'm noticing. Overall, the activity that I gave them, they got to pick from 3 different movie trailers, posters, Star Wars, Doctor Strange, and The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. And of these 3 posters, they went into pairs, and started analyzing and writing down what it is that they see going on, and then what they think is going on. And it's interesting to see how all of the different students have different attention to detail. Some students oh, the characters do this, the characters do that, or this is a coloring of it, and I'm like, that's interesting. Only one group though focused on the Hunger Games poster, which is really interesting because it was a very intricate, detailed one. So there's a lot going on, so there's a lot to write about. But overall, everybody seems to get a grasp of this idea, and they can now instill this onto their homework assignment. Next class, I'm going to talk a little bit more about scenes. So whatever movie trailer it is movie poster that it is that they wrote about, I want them to kind of create a scene and focus on the scene. So for example, they write about Beauty and the Beast, the Disney version, the Disney classic version, the one that came out in the 90s. They would have to find a way to apply the ballroom, the setting is what I mean. I don't know, but that's all that I can think about talking about right now.